Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of The Suited Shootist, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be talking specifically to either my current active duty or prior service guys, and this is regardless of if it's military, law enforcement. I don't know if this applies to EMT and firefighters as well. I assume it does to some degree, but basically what I want to touch on is the fact that your uniform regulations are setting you up for failure. And so what do I mean by that? If you are in a position where you have uniform requirements, and the big two that we're talking about here are law enforcement and military, then there are certain eccentricities that are in those regs that do not translate and cross over into the private sector when you are transitioning from Class A dress uniform to suit. And they can be some significant tells, even though they're these little details. And so it's something that I wanted to touch on real quick, just because I've seen the mistakes made often enough that I think it's worth mentioning. But before I jump into that, just real quick, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. That's always a huge help. And so let's jump into it. The first one is one that I have touched on several times, but I'm actually committing this sin right now, which is on a civilian suit coat, you never button all the buttons. The bottom button, regardless of how many there are, unless there's only one, remains undone. As to why, there's a whole bunch of historical context to it, and generally the grumbling is, well, if you're not supposed to button it, then why is it there? That's stupid. You know what? The rules are what they are. Now, I have never really seen a compelling argument as to the benefit for breaking this rule, unlike some others, but it's one of those where, regardless of what your regulation said when you're in service, in the private sector, you don't button the bottom button of a jacket. If it's a 3-button, the top one is dealer's choice. But it's one of those things that I see all the time. The other one is kind of moving inward, the gig line. So yes, your shirt placket should absolutely line up with your fly, but your belt buckle is not supposed to be offset in line with all of that. It should be centered, kind of in line with the buttons. It's a little detail, but it's one of those things where if it's out of whack, people might not be able to put their finger on why, but they know it looks wrong. So that's just, it's another minor little tweak. Also, go into the belt. This applies to the belt and the shoes. Black doesn't go with everything. Stop it. Black is a very formal color in the private sector. And honestly, the sort of Italian school of thought is that you only wear black shoes to a funeral, like not even a wedding. Short of like black tie, tuxedo, I really don't wear black shoes or a black belt at all. And the belt and the shoes should coordinate. They don't necessarily need to match exactly, but they should certainly jive with one another. Example, I'm wearing a kind of a mid-blue suit. I've got a purple shirt on. You can see I'm wearing a brown belt with this. And so, in that vein, shoes that I would wear with something like this would either be an oxblood or something like a chestnut Oxford. This one having a bit more broguing and detail on it makes it a bit more casual. And that's another thing, is that this whole deal doesn't have to be supremely formal. I mean, with how I've got it right now, open collar, patterned dress shirt, I've got, a slightly more kind of festive pocket square going on. The metal of my belt buckle is kind of a brushed pebble finish. And so this is still, kind of a more casual suit in this configuration. And so get away from the idea that every time you put a necktie on, it's got to be the most formal thing, or every time you put a jacket on, because it's not the case. I mean, it is entirely possible to be comfortable in this kind of stuff. So those are kind of the main elements of it. The other thing that I want to get away from is, first off, polyester, both in the fabric of the shirt and the suit, and especially the necktie. No. I will asterisk that because there are some developments being made in synthetic fabrics in men's suiting, and so it's becoming a much more advanced field. But like the cheap institutional polyester that they use in uniforms, the reason that those jackets were as uncomfortable and as hot as they were to wear was because they were made out of a shitty polyester. If you have a well-constructed jacket that is made out of a good quality material and it's canvassed properly, it'll still breathe. I run hot. Like I am a hot-blooded individual, but I mean, I'm not going to necessarily go out and do yard work in the thing, but I've been able to attend outdoor functions and be perfectly comfortable in my suits because they're made properly. So those are really the big elements of it. The other one that I see happen a lot is when it comes to a wristwatch. Look, if the only watch that you've got is a G-Shock or like a Sunto or some kind of rugged field watch, if you find yourself in an instance where dressing like this is required of you, just leave the damn thing at home. You don't have to wear a watch. You know, ostensibly you've got your phone with you and that's going to be able to tell you the time if necessary. But pairing some, rugged utility watch with something like this is just so incongruent that it looks like you don't know what you're doing. I don't even like wearing big, chunky tool watches. I mean, yeah, technically this Omega Seamaster is a dive watch, but it's thin and low profile enough that it slips under the cuff with no issue. So that, and then, any other accessories, the sunglasses are another big one. I actually did a YouTube short about that I'm going to link to as well. But again, if you find yourself dressing in something like this, leave the Oakleys at home. Get yourself a decent pair of just like regular sunglasses. Not everything has to be ANSI rated, because that's another thing is like if you're dressed up and you're wearing Ballistic Eye Pro, it looks like it's either the only pair that you've got or that you're like cosplaying security. So those are really the big ones. Pay attention to the buttons, pay attention to the belt, pay attention to the fabrics, make sure that you're not relegated to just black shoes anymore, and just be a little bit more thoughtful with the whole thing. Now, the aspects of the uniform reg in terms of how things are supposed to fit properly and be neatly pressed and all that kind of thing, that all still applies. But the idea is that the attention to detail that was the motivating factor behind all of that still applies to your civilian wardrobe as well. But it's the little habits that you just get used to. Those are the ones that you need to stay on top of. So let me know what you think on this. Was this helpful? Or, is it screw it, I'm still going to do it and this guy doesn't know what he's talking about? Put it down in the comments. I want to hear it. If you're getting mileage out of the channel and you want to support it directly, we've got the Patreon that's up and active. And if you like these types of discussions and you want to engage in it a little bit more, we have the Facebook group as well. So please, by all means, join up. We got a ton of great conversation going. And aside from that, I hope everybody has a great week. Stay dangerous. Stay sharp.